All right, Bitcoin has been announced dead 500 plus times since it came into existence in 2009. So we're going to take a look at some of the most common concerns about Bitcoin and see if it really can survive and continue to survive and thrive. Some of these are just going to be FUD. Other of these are going to be, and it's just old FUD. We'll address some of those. Others are going to be potential future attack vectors. And let's really see how robust this is. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to share any potential other ways that Bitcoin could fail, and let's see if we can address them all, right? So here's the thing. I'm going to go through this list. Here's a list that was put together. Some of the ideas I had, and then some of it was just leveraging what really ChatGPT could potentially identify as well. All right. So here is the list, and why don't we work our way through said list? All right. So codes and bugs, code bugs, protocol exploits, etc. Right. This is absolutely a potential issue. The good news with Bitcoin, though, is that it's open source and there's a lot of really, really intelligent coders and just people in general that are highly convicted and involved in this. So if there is code issues, which there has been, but because we have protocol in place through BIP protocols and other things, through the voting mechanism and nodes, we can make changes to Bitcoin code should that be a concern, right? So is it a threat? Absolutely. Code bugs are always a threat, but I do have confidence that there's enough intelligent people that are going to dedicate their time that they will address it to solve any problems. In the long term, there could be short-term issues, but in the long term, I think that we're going to be okay from that standpoint. Mining centralization and 51% attacks. If one actor or nation takes over mining pools, here's the thing. The amount of hash power that's involved. So this comes down to the beautiful part about game theory and really incentives. Who said it? Warren Buffett said, if there's only one thing I can work on, it would be incentives, because everybody is driven and operates off of incentives. So there's a couple things here with the 51% attack. First of all, economically, it would take a tremendous amount of resources, because this is proof of work, right? Not proof of stake. This is proof of work. So you have to expend energy, you have to expend money in order to generate that hash power, okay? So from an economic standpoint, it's not impossible, but it would be highly challenging to acquire enough hardware, ASICs, to generate that much hash power and have the economic funds to operate that equipment, or have access to low enough energy where it makes sense, but you still have the operating costs or the capital expenses of the mining hardware. Anyways, on top of that, a 51% attack. All right, let's say you get the biggest mine. If you have 51% mining power and hashing power, you're getting block rewards pretty frequently. So what is the incentive to spend all of this energy, all of this money to then attack the system? This is where it goes against the incentives, because if you're going to spend all that energy and money to get to the point of being able to do a 51% attack, you are disincentivized to do so, because you spend a tremendous amount of energy to get there and money, and probably mined a lot of Bitcoin in that process. And if you attack the system, the trust is lost and the Bitcoin price comes down dramatically or crashes, right? So what's an analogy? I don't have a great analogy. It's like you're saving up to buy a race car so that you can win the race, but then at the very end, you smash into everybody else and create a huge crash. Like, dude, you just go win the war. Be a winner. Just stay a winner. Just be a winner, right? So that's a probably terrible analogy, but the whole thing here is you're disincentivized to attack Bitcoin, because in order to create that much hash power, you would have gotten mining rewards. And with those mining rewards, unless you're selling them right away just to pay off and try and break even and then put an attack on this thing, you're just not incentivized to do so, right? So that's one thing to look at. Developer capture, governance failures, hostile group captures the dev process or blocks critical fixes. I mean, this is more of an existential crisis of non-agreement amongst the dev team. And I think that we've seen this in the block wars in the past. Things have gotten resolved eventually because people do want to see Bitcoin survive and be successful, even if there needs to be compromise or there's disagreement, right? But a hostile group capturing, I actually haven't heard this one before. A hostile group captures the dev process or blocks critical fixes. The whole thing here is it's open source, so just about anybody can create, can make these updates and improve the development process. So this one I don't think is a huge issue. Network partition or BGP hijacking. Nation states could partition the Bitcoin network temporarily. Okay, fine, it's temporarily, but there's so many nodes out there. How are you going to go out there and take over all the nodes? This one I don't see as a big issue. Quantum computing. Let's hit on this one for. Let's dig into this one a little bit more, because I do believe this is probably the biggest threat. Now, it's not near term, but let's say 5, 10, 20 years, this absolutely is a threat. Here's why I personally am not overly concerned about quantum computing, right? Because here's the thing. SHA-256 is the encryption method, model that's used to keep your private keys secure. And I believe I have heard a stat that, let's look this up. I'm just kind of curious here. Let's give a quick little look here. How many, let's just do this. SHA-256, how hard to brute force attack. Compare it to the number of sand particles on Earth or the number of stars in the galaxy. I've heard one of these analogies, and let's take a look here, because all that it's saying is that it's insanely difficult to attack, right? A brute force is an attempt against blah, blah, blah. Here's number 256. Okay, estimates of sand particles on Earth. Estimates of the number of sand grains on Earth vary widely, but a commonly cited figure is 7.5 times 10 to the 18th power grains. Some estimates are as high as 1027. Blah, 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 10 to the 14th. In order, the number of SHA-256 result is punishable hashes. This is an enormous number, approximately 1.16 times 10 to the 77th power. So we're talking 7 times. I mean, this is just wild. So what are we saying here? This is you need to go out. I need to send you out there and say, I've chosen the single piece of sand in the entire world. Now you need to go out there and find that particular piece of sand in the entire world. You're more likely to find that particle of sand than you are to crack SHA-256 through brute force attack, okay? That means you're just guessing enough times to get it right, okay? Now here's the argument, is that with quantum computing, you could do a tremendous amount of activity in a very rapid amount of time. So therefore, maybe you could brute force your way. But here's the problem. Here's why I'm not overly concerned about it. Think about, so the 24-word seed phrase. That's a lot of words. Now go ask yourself the question, how long is my bank password? I'm going to guess it's not 24 unique words. Not characters, but 24 unique words. Not likely, right? So then you have to think about it and say, okay, if quantum computing could crack SHA-256, it could easily crack and break and brute force its way into any bank account because it's much less secure, any bank account in the world. And are they going to go after my bank account, your bank account? They could. Or are they going to go after corporate treasuries? Are they going to go after Apple with what? 40, 50, 60 billion dollars in cash. All right? And I get it, it's across different multiple accounts, but you get the point. This is an absolute threat, but there are so many other things in life that are less secure than SHA-256. What that says is, I believe again in incentives that when this becomes a true attack vector, all of the wealth, think about all of the trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars that are behind weak passwords, relatively weak to SHA-256, that has to be solved for. Because if all of that money is wiped out, cool, your Bitcoin's still secure, they can attack it, but they're going to go after this lower hanging fruit much earlier in the process. So I do believe that the brightest and sharpest minds will solve this problem because we have to solve this problem, right? And problems evolve and change over time. In Europe, there was concerns, maybe it was Italy or somewhere, they said that there was so much cow manure from these horses that these cities were going to literally, you wouldn't be able to survive and live with them. And guess what? They didn't figure out a better way to get rid of the cow manure. All they did, or that horse manure, all they did is new technology came, and it wasn't to solve the horse manure thing. It was to travel faster, and that was the electric car. Not the electric car, that was the car. Combustion engine. Guess what? Problem became a moot point. They didn't even solve for it. It just became a moot point, right? So there's a lot of these things in life that come up and can become a moot point, but also true challenges, the brightest and sharpest minds will flock to those because the cost is so high to solve this that instead of people, the highest paid positions today are to distract us, right? It's through social media and Google and Netflix and all these places of very, very high paying developer jobs. All that's going to happen is this is going to become such a threat and such an issue that the highest paying jobs will transition to solve this problem. The brightest and sharpest minds will go there, right? Because they're going to be incentivized financially to solve this problem. They're going to go where the highest pay is. And all of a sudden, that will address the issue. And the beautiful part is we have got a lot of runway relative to a lot of the other security protocols. SHA-256 is one of the most secure out there. That's why I'm not overly concerned about quantum computing, because I do believe in the human race and that we can solve challenging problems when they become remotely painful enough. It's too far away for us to feel the pain, and when the pain gets closer, I do believe we will solve for these issues. So it is an absolute attack vector, but I believe in humanity. Minor incentive collapse. This one's an interesting one. If fees don't sustain security post-block subsidy. So what they're saying is at some point, if the amount of, because as the halvings happen and there's less and less Bitcoin to mine and the hash rate goes up, it's going to cost more and more money to mine the Bitcoin. Now, on the reverse side of that is you've got the direct correlation of as hash power goes up and as we go through the Bitcoin life cycle, the price has gone up. So it's been equal. But if these diverge at any point in time, the security is secured, stupid way to say it, but it's secured through the miners, and those miners are incentivized by the block rewards. If those block rewards are not enough to financially incentivize them, this could become an issue. Now, in theory, the last Bitcoin will be mined by 2140, and then it's purely based on transaction fees. We could run into an issue sooner, but based on Bitcoin's price performance and hash rates, would probably be okay. This one, I don't know. And in my lifetime, I won't be alive to see what happens when there are no more block rewards. This one is a potential threat. However, you might simply be incentivized if you're a large enough holder, and I'm talking about holders like Coinbase, for example, where they are storing and securing Bitcoin for a lot of these corporate treasuries. There's so much money there. It's kind of like insurance, right? So if you hold a lot of gold, you're probably going to insure it at some point, right? And And so this could more or less be an insurance policy where you lose a little bit of money to keep your assets secure if you have a large enough amount of it. If you have a single gold coin, you may not have secure it. And let's just talk to physical security. You may just have it in your jewelry box. If you got a bunch of gold coins, maybe it's in a safe or it's in a lockbox. And if you're the Federal Reserve, you've got physical security through cameras and guards and all of this physical security. This might just be the price that is paid by the big boys to secure the network and make sure that their funds are secured. So this one is a concern. I don't see it as a near-term concern, and I believe that there's enough natural incentives and enough wealth associated with keeping this asset secure that this one will get addressed. Supply chain attacks on wallets, hardware wallet manufacturing backdoors. Yeah, that's absolutely a threat. When you get your hardware wallet, use a new password and do entropy. You roll your dice, create your own thing. Like, this is always an attack vector, but one that you can control, right? Just know it's an attack vector. Your back door to your house is always an attack vector. Well, when you buy a new house, change the locks, right? Like, change, just like with the passcode, when they give you a password, just change the password, and as soon as you get it, that reduces the attack vector. There's always going to be attack vectors, and what I'm looking at is more systematic attack vectors rather than personal ownership attack vectors. I would say this is more of a personal attack vector. I wouldn't say this is something that would be likely to occur at such a large scale, because people will take the initiative to sell for that. The more sophisticated individuals. Medium level. State level coordinated ban and enforcement. Global coordinated ban is difficult but not impossible. Yeah, sure, everything's possible, but here's the thing. We've already seen countries like El Salvador move towards Bitcoin as being legal tender. We're seeing this. Here's the thing. And we're past, in the United States, prior to the recent administration, there was a lot of concern about the legality and really the crackdown on crypto. I believe the world and everything really changed in 2024 when the ETFs came out. That really legitimized it as more of a traditional asset. But at the same time, could there be coordinated efforts to put a ban on this, changes in administration or whatever? Absolutely. Again, this comes down to incentives. There's how many, 212, I don't know how many countries there are, but there's a lot of different countries out there. What's the likelihood that all 212 of anybody agrees on anything? It's unlikely. And what happens is, if the majority of let's say all but one country bans Bitcoin, but one country still has their sovereignty and they say, hey, you can bring your Bitcoin. What's going to happen? If you have enough Bitcoin, if you have tens of millions, hundreds of millions, if you get $1 billion in Bitcoin, you'll probably go create residency there, right? Become a lawful citizen and still control and operate your Bitcoin. And then the argument's going to be, okay, well, fine. How are you going to trade that? How are you going to do that within anybody else who's not within that country? I get that, but there's a black market. People will figure out a way to buy and sell anything. Drugs are illegal. They still get sold all the time. I mean, we see this stuff all the time, right? So I don't have a huge concern here based on the tailwinds that we have with current administration, the fact that we have institutions buying a tremendous amount of Bitcoin, the fact that we have ETFs and corporate entities putting it on their balance sheet. We're headed in a very positive direction. Could there be bans by country? Yes. Do I see every single country coming together and banning crypto and specifically Bitcoin? I just don't. That's not an overly large concern, because some country will be incentivized to say, nobody wants you, we do. Okay? That'll happen. All right. Large Bitcoin treasury sudden movement. Let's say Satoshi's coins move. It would shatter, I agree with this one. It would shatter the confidence, but not destroy Bitcoin technically. There is no fundamental change. Plus, there's 1 million out of 21 million, 1 million Bitcoin that Satoshi or Patoshi has relative to that supply. It would be dramatic. If anybody sold 1 million Bitcoin, it would be dramatic. It would move the price. It would not put it to zero. Would it shatter the confidence? It would surprise a lot of people and cause a lot of concern. I think it would set Bitcoin back 5 to 10 years from a price appreciation standpoint. It'd be an amazing time to purchase based on that knee-jerk reaction. But the fundamentals of Bitcoin still remain. There still remains 21 million. They continue to print money. These governments will continue to print money. They're inflating the buying power away in all of the currencies. These are all things that have not changed if that money moves, but I would see a dramatic price decrease and set Bitcoin back for a little bit, right? Censorship attacks on transactions, regulatory pressure on miners to censor possible without enough collusion. Censorship attacks on transactions. To be honest, I don't even know exactly where they're going with this one. Could there be attacks? Sure. I'm going to move on because I'm not even sure I follow where that one's going. All right. Massive internet outages. This comes down to electromagnetic pulses, EMPs. So what this is an EMP is something that sends these electrical waves out in a pulse and it fries computers. Could this happen? Yes, it is a possibility. Now keep in mind there's two things here. One, I operate a node. Lots of people operate nodes. It's on a Raspberry Pi. It probably costs me $6 a year in electric costs, right? So it's almost nothing, right? Almost nothing. And so I'm doing this to protect the network because all you need is a single node that's operating to keep the ledger alive. Okay, so not only you can have a regional, you can have a national, but to have a global EMP. One, that's unlikely, and all you need is a single node to continue to operate to keep the ledger alive. Okay, so that is unlikely. Second of all, if there was an EMP that did occur in which every single electronic in the world was fried, we would be in Armageddon, and your focus should be on owning guns and ammunition and food and water and a safe haven because everything else, nothing else would matter. Okay? You wouldn't be able to go to the grocery store. You wouldn't be able to drive your cars. You wouldn't be able to turn on your electricity. You wouldn't be able to do anything. So all you're literally doing is surviving. No matter how much money you have, no matter how much Bitcoin you have, it would be an absolute moot point. You are literally there just to survive and get this world back again. And that's through security, food, water, shelter, and that's it. Okay? It would be Armageddon. You're not going to worry about your stocks. You're not going to worry about your bonds. You're not going to worry about anything. You're not going to worry about your Bitcoin. All of that's a moot point. So if that type of situation occurred, could happen, major risk, it would be a black swan Armageddon. So there you go. Mass de-anonymization surveillance. Well, it could hurt fungibility, but likely won't kill bug. De-anonymization. So they know who has Bitcoin, right? That's what I think they're saying, is they have a way to figure out what every single person's address is and who it's connected to, and so they know how large your stack is. I mean, yeah, that's a concern, but it doesn't, again, change too much of the fundamentals. It would put more of a personal risk for wrench attacks where people knew you had money, they could beat you over the head with a wrench till you give them the passcodes. But at the same time, people know that there's wealthy people. There's billionaires that are on the Forbes list. There's, I don't know, there's sports stars, there's movies actors. Like, the people know that these people have money, and so there could be attacks on anybody at any point in time. I don't see this being likely to occur because you can continue to move Bitcoin, but if they did, maybe you know where every single transaction went associated with each individual that is connected to it. Not likely. And I don't know, people know that there are wealthy people. People can look at somebody's house and be like, I'm pretty sure they have money, and you need to be smart, wise, and have security in place and kind of go from there. So I don't see this as a very likely one. Okay. Low potential threats, extremely unlikely or distant. Complete SHA-256 breakdown, basically sci-fi without quantum computing. Okay. We hit on this one already. EMP. We hit on this one already as well. Solar flare destroying mining hardware globally. Catastrophic, but recovery is possible with global redundancy. Okay, there you go. Aliens introducing a better money. Yeah, you know what? Cool. I would embrace it. Like, if you guys got something better than Bitcoin, let's do it. Because guess what? Here's a little thought experiment. Okay, here we go. Back in the day, we had Rhea stones, right? But gold is better than Rhea stones. So people technically could have traded, this is back in the day, Rhea stones for gold. Here's a worse example. The weaker money can move to stronger money, and you want the strongest money that you can possibly have, right? So at some point, people aren't going to want to trade fiat dollars for Bitcoin, okay? But right now, you absolutely can trade fiat dollars for Bitcoin. If this new aliens introduce, first of all, that would be a wild world. I don't think we'd be as concerned about material wealth as just like, are they friendly? Are they nice? Are they gonna just destroy us, right? But anyway, let's say they're nice and they want to give us this awesome money. Would they rather take? So people can exchange worse money for better money. We see it today. People exchange fiat for Bitcoin. Are you going to want to continue to go down the ladder? So if there's this better money, are you going to go from fiat to alien money, or are you going to want to take Bitcoin, which is better money than fiat Bitcoin, for this alien money? If you're willing to make that kind of trade, I mean, still Bitcoin wins again in that argument no matter what. People, if you're going to make the trade, you're going to want the better asset of the two, even if it's not the best, because people will sell Bitcoin, for example, to buy real estate, which doesn't perform as well as Bitcoin, but it does provide some utility. So those are just examples where people will trade an inferior asset for a better asset, and vice versa, right? So this one it's wild, it's out there, but I think at the end of the day, you can trade a lot of different things. You can barter. Bitcoin will still hold some level of value, even in that instance. Total loss of interest. Everyone just stops using Bitcoin. Statistically very low. Bitcoin is too embedded now, both in the institutions, within governments, and there's a philosophical, almost religious belief in Bitcoin, and the fact that it was the Immaculate Conception. There is no third party to attack. There is no individual. There is no corporation. Satoshi was synonymous and anonymous. And so Bitcoin cannot, in my opinion, be recreated because of that. And in addition, I mean, the fundamentals would have to change so dramatically where governments would stop debasing their money, stop inflating the money away, and somehow people believe that this less scarce asset is better than the most scarce asset in the world. I mean, there's so much belief in such a long track record and such bright and intelligent minds that have dedicated themselves to this space. I see that one as difficult to even be a thing. Does it lose interest in it when it has peaks and valleys? Yeah, absolutely. A lot of this is driven by the price action. But what you're going to see, and this is my theory, is that as the price goes up, you get weaker and weaker hands coming in, and as the price goes down, the weak hands will sell out through fear. And those who've built conviction, and the conviction doesn't happen immediately, it takes time. So you actually have more and more diamond hands. The more cycles go through, the more likely they're to say, hey, this 80% drawdown, this is just part of the process to me getting, sovereign, and live the life that I want, that they're willing to do that, and they're willing to buy the dips. And the more stronger and stronger hands you have that aren't just going to hodl, that's less and less sell pressure, which is then the cycle of, if we continue to move all the Bitcoin into diamond hands, the price can only go up. That is literally it, because people are holding this pristine asset. So anyway, This is a list of some of the attack vectors. Here's the stack rank list right there. There's a whole bunch. Let me know your thoughts. Are there any of these attack vectors that weren't listed? Are there any major concerns that you have about Bitcoin that we can help address? Are there any wild speculative ideas out there? Is there anything I didn't explain well or correctly? Let me know. Let's have a dialogue. There's always going to be FUD. There's always going to be concern. But the more we can understand all of the risks and the likelihood or how unlikely some of these risks are to occur, this helps build conviction. And with conviction, we can have confidence that we're making the right decision in stacking sats, staying sovereign. So like and subscribe below. Let me know your thoughts. Throw out your ideas. Throw out your concerns. Let's address them as a community and enjoy.